This video is about the most brutal dictator ever versus the nicest dictator ever. This is the most brutal dictator ever, Sani Abacha of Nigeria, responsible for the death of Ken Saro-Wiwa, an environmental activist, and Bagauda Kalto, a journalist who was bombed in his hotel room in Bumba Hotel, Kaduna, Nigeria. Versus Jose Mujica of Uruguay, often hailed as the world's nicest president. He was so nice, he gave 90% of his salary to charities to help poor families and small-scale entrepreneurs. Let's first compare them on the issue of corruption. Let this circle represent Nigeria's national revenue for a year. This is what a decade's revenue would look like. Now, envision a stash swelled to multiple times this amount hidden away. General Sani Abacha, Nigeria's military ruler, allegedly siphoned off billions from the nation's coffers. The sum of over $3 billion of Abacha's looted funds has been recovered by Nigeria since his death in 1998, and in all this there is the average citizen. You're possibly a farmer, trader, or office worker contributing to the nation's growth. Your savings might be modest, with every naira crucial for your family's needs. High costs, low income, a feeling of being undervalued, and maybe even debts form your financial landscape. Perhaps you're a student, hopeful that your education will pave the way to prosperity. Savings, a luxury, with only the shadow of potential future debts looming large. Amidst this, witnessing tales of opulence and extravagance from the rich and powerful can be maddening. How, you wonder, did they get so rich? As wealth accumulates in the hands of a few, you say to yourself, they must have been lucky, they must have inherited it, they must have stolen it, they must be in a secret cult. Wishing for a better life, to be well off and have opportunities, feels like a distant dream. When you look at what's happening in the country, you realize as things aren't looking good. The system seems unfair, things are unbalanced, and you're stuck in the middle of this huge mess. Nigerians felt this dread and pain under General Sani Abacha like no other, but leaders like Jose Mujica have always showed to understand the plights of the average citizens, to the extent he was called the poorest president ever. While leaders travel in grandeur, Mujica drove an old Volkswagen Beetle. As presidents lived in opulence, he chose a farm over a palace and fancy suits. Nah, sandals and simple clothes did the trick. In stark contrast to Abacha's opulence in 2014, Mujica's declared personal wealth amounted to approximately 322,880 euros. Most of this was his wife's assets, which consisted of their shared home, 3 tractors, and 2 old cars. Mujica, as part of his humility, donated around 90% of his $12,000 monthly salary to charities, primarily to assist the poor and small entrepreneurs. On the corruption scale, Nigeria, under Abacha, ranked consistently low in Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index, CPI. For instance, in 1996, Nigeria was the most corrupt among the 54 countries evaluated. Comparatively, Uruguay has always been one of the least corrupt countries in Latin America. Under Mujica, Uruguay made significant strides in improving its global CPI rank. By 2014, it ranked first in Latin America, a testimony to Mujica's commitment to good governance. Moreover, during Abacha's reign, Nigeria's GDP per capita lingered around $300, revealing the country's stark economic struggles. Despite being one of the world's top oil producers, the massive theft and mismanagement of public funds hindered national development. While in Uruguay, under Mujica, the country experienced steady economic growth. Between 2010 to 2015, Uruguay's GDP per capita nearly doubled from around $12,000 to over $21,000. This was partially due to Mujica's initiatives to diversify the economy, focusing not just on beef exports but also technology, tourism, and renewable energy. While Abacha's regime was notorious for its human rights abuses, Mujica's government was hailed for championing civil rights. Under his leadership, Uruguay was the first country to legalize the growth, sale, and export of recreational marijuana. In the realm of international reputation, Mujica's Uruguay was recognized as a beacon of democracy and progressive values. In contrast, Abacha's Nigeria faced embargoes and sanctions. Even the way they both attained power is different. Jose Mujica's journey to power was rooted in his transformation from a guerrilla fighter to a legitimate political leader through the Broad Front Party in Uruguay. Before becoming president, Mujica was involved in the Tupamaros guerrilla movement during the 1960s and 1970s, and he was imprisoned for 13 years during Uruguay's military dictatorship. After his release, he transitioned into mainstream politics and became a senator and later the Minister of Livestock, Agriculture and Fisheries before his presidency. Sani Abacha's rise to power was through the military in Nigeria. He was a career military officer who became increasingly influential within the Nigerian armed forces as he ascended the ranks. In 1993, he played a significant role in overthrowing the transitional government of Chief Ernest Shonekan. Abacha then assumed power as the de facto military ruler of Nigeria, but Sani Abacha's rule in Nigeria was marked by corruption, repression, and human rights abuses. He seized power in a military coup in 1993 and established an authoritarian regime. Abacha and his associates embezzled billions of dollars from Nigeria's treasury, leading to the country being labeled as one of the most corrupt in the world during his tenure. His regime suppressed opposition parties and civil society, leading to the imprisonment of activists and journalists critical of the government. The mysterious deaths of several prominent figures, including politician Moshood Abiola and environmental activist Ken Saro-Wiwa, are attributed to Abacha's government. Abacha's regime faced international condemnation and sanctions due to his human rights violations and corruption. His misrule left Nigeria's economy and political institutions weakened, hindering the country's development. While Jose Mujica was praised for his efforts to combat drug trafficking and his innovative approach to drug policy, Uruguay became the first country to legalize the production, sale, and consumption of marijuana for recreational purposes under his leadership. This move aimed to reduce drug-related crime and shift control away from criminal organizations. Additionally, Mujica's commitment to social justice was evident in his decision to donate the majority of his presidential salary to charitable causes. He advocated for a fairer distribution of wealth and reduced income inequality within Uruguay. So who was in charge of their security? Sani Abacha, during his time as the military dictator of Nigeria, maintained a large and powerful security apparatus to ensure his personal safety and maintain his grip on power. One of the key components of this security apparatus was the strike force, often referred to as the Presidential Guard Brigade or the Special Military Task Force. This unit, reported to consist of around 3,000 highly trained soldiers, was responsible for providing close protection to Abacha, guarding strategic locations, suppressing opposition, and ensuring the regime's control over the Nigerian military and security forces. At the helm of this unit was Major Hamza al-Mustafa, who served as Abacha's Chief Security Officer, CSO. Al-Mustafa was a close confidant of Abacha and was widely regarded as one of the most powerful and influential figures within the regime. Due to his proximity to Abacha and his leadership of the strike force, al-Mustafa was often referred to as the Angel of Death. Under his command, the strike force was known to have committed numerous human rights abuses and acts of repression against perceived threats to the regime. In contrast to Abacha's heavily militarized approach to security, Jose Mujica of Uruguay had a more low-key and relaxed security detail. Despite being the president of a country, Mujica often shunned the usual trappings of power and was known for his simple and humble lifestyle. Instead of a large security detail, Mujica preferred a smaller group of guards, emphasizing trust and loyalty over numbers. This approach was in line with his overall philosophy of leading by example and living a life of simplicity and humility. While Mujica did have security guards to protect him, they were often seen as more of a formality than a necessity. In the end, their life outcomes differed. Jose Mujica lived a long life and is currently 88 years old, enjoying his post-presidential life on his farm in Uruguay. He is revered both nationally and internationally for his leadership and his commitment to social justice. Sani Abacha, on the other hand, met an untimely end. He died under mysterious circumstances on June 8, 1998. While the official cause of death was stated as a heart attack, there has been widespread speculation and conspiracy theories suggesting foul play. Given his authoritarian rule, corrupt practices, and the repression of his opponents, the exact circumstances surrounding his death remain a subject of debate and speculation. Click here if you want to see how Nigerian political leaders use Nigeria's dark history to separate and pit the poor to fight themselves while they loot our resources.